Welcome to the Swayam MOOC course, NGOs and Sustainable Development, Unit 3, Module 18, Bioenergy, Sustainable Livelihoods and Rural Poor in Sustainable Development. Learning Objectives. By the end of this module, you will be able to understand how bioenergy is a sustainable renewable energy, understand the need for sustainable livelihoods, discern the importance of sustainable rural development. Now let us see what is bioenergy. It is one of the many different resources that can be used to meet the energy needs. It contributes to about 14% of the world's total energy requirement. As shown in the figure, this biomass, which is grown from the sun, is harvested and it is pre-processed and it is used for various purposes. Now after it is used, the residues are left out. Now these residues can be converted into a usable form which is called as biofuels. The fuel can be used for vehicles as an energy source. It can be used for electricity generation to power our lighting purposes, and it can be used for various activities where energy has been used. Further, energy derived from biofuels can also be used for cooking, heating purposes. Materials derived from plants and also derived from animals can be used as biofuels. It is a type of renewable energy produced from organic elements which can be used to create products, and in turn it can generate heat, power as well as transportation fuel. What do you mean by biomass? Any organic material that can be utilized as a source of energy is called biomass. It can include wood, plants, seafood and also animal waste. After the sun, which is solar energy, I think biomass is perhaps the most ancient energy source. People have used wood to cook their food in olden days and also sometimes to heat their homes, and this has been happening for thousands of years. Sunlight provides the plant with the energy that is required for photosynthesis, and they change the water and carbon dioxide into oxygen and carbohydrates. As shown in the figure, on the left hand side we see the natural cycle of biomass, while on the right hand side we see energy production from biomass. Biomass is a renewable source of energy and it is readily available form of energy, since wastes are always there with us, and from these wastes energy can be generated. The sources of biomass include forestry, crop residues, agricultural crops and residues, sewage, industrial residues, animal residues and also municipal solid waste. Now how do we generate energy from this biomass? As shown in the picture, the biomass is referred as feedstocks, and this feedstock is fed into the digester where methane is generated. Now methane is a biogas and it is cleaned and taken to the biogas storage equipment. From there it can be used to burn the stoves using the gas burners, or it can be used to run the turbine, and further from the turbine it can be used to generate electricity. Similarly, the biogas can be taken to the vehicle engines, and once it is used in the vehicle engines like car and bus, it can be used for transportation. Now this feedstock can be the waste products from various activities such as agriculture, food processing or from timber manufacture, and these can be grown so that we get the residues from these industries and they can be used as feedstocks. In boilers or furnaces, how do we use these feedstocks? So we need to convert them into wood pellets so that they can be used as feedstocks in the boilers. Now briquetted biomass is a compressed form of wood. So it has a bulk density of around 600 to 800 kg per cubic meter. So the wood is compressed and made into pellets or briquettes, and this compressed form is then used in the boilers. This causes water to boil and it can be used to produce steam, which in turn powers a turbine to produce energy. Food waste and other wet feedstocks are placed in the sealed tanks where they degrade and release methane gas, and the picture shows a plant where methane gas is generated. Electricity can also be produced by capturing the gas and burning it, and it can then also be used for heating and cooking purposes in domestic or in hotels. Is bioenergy environmentally friendly and sustainable? Yes. Carbon dioxide is produced during biomass burning. However, it does not upset the atmospheric carbon balance because it emits the same amount of carbon that the organic material received as it grew. So, as the plant grew, the carbon has been absorbed and that is released back to the atmosphere. Whereas, on the other side, when I am burning fossil fuels, in contrast, it releases carbon dioxide that has been trapped for millions of years from the time the Earth's atmosphere was radically different. By increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, it upsets the carbon balance, and in turn it results in climatic change, it results in increase of temperature and so many environmental hazards. The overall sustainability and environmental benefits of bioenergy can depend on whether the waste feedstocks or energy crops are being used, and it is not fossil fuels that we are using for our energy requirements. Now let us see what we mean by traditional bioenergy. When we use traditional bioenergy, it poses a problem since it is not strongly ingrained and it is not environmentally friendly because it does not take effective mechanism to remove all the environmental hazards. It is high time we move away from the conventional usage of biomass and we move into modern methods, modern technologies that will help us to be environmentally friendly in the way we use the biomass, and in turn we are moving up the energy ladder. So what do we mean by modern bioenergy? So modern bioenergy has got specific technologies as shown in the picture, where we have digesters and we have biomass generation units which ensures that the atmosphere, what is released to the atmosphere, is environmentally friendly and the residues are taken aside for fertilizers which can be used as fertilizers in agriculture. So bioenergy has assisted in the growth of regional economies over the past few decades, and in numerous situations it helps in reducing the import of fossil fuel from foreign countries. The utilization of bioenergy resources can help further to reduce the greenhouse gases, and hence it helps to give a sustainable energy source. In many nations, particularly in the developing countries known as the DCs and in the least developed countries known as the LDCs, biomass has been traditionally used for cooking and heating purposes. But now, with modern technologies and techniques, we can use the same biomass by converting it into pellets or briquettes and use them for any form. It can be used for heating and cooking purposes, it can be used for electricity, and it can also be used in vehicles as a transportation fuel. So some of the sources of biodiesel is the soybean seeds, the cotton seeds, the corn, groundnut seeds, the sunflower, rapeseed, waste vegetable oils, animal fat. So all these are obtained from the ground, very renewable in nature, biodegradable in nature and environmentally friendly. From such sources of plants, we can get vegetable power or vegetable electricity, and one such biomethanation plant is available in Chennai, which has a capacity of 4,800 kilowatt and it uses around 30 tons of vegetable waste. It also produces 250 kilowatt of electricity power. Another example is the starch process effluent plant, which is available at the Varalakshmi Starch Industries Private Limited at Salem, Tamil Nadu. It produces around 500 kilowatt of electricity, and this biomethanation plant generates around 30,000 meter cube of biogas every day. 1 meter cube of biogas helps to mitigate 500 kg of carbon dioxide per year when LPG is replaced with biogas. Chemically, biomass refers to hydrocarbons containing hydrogen, carbon and oxygen. So it acts as an essential medium for sustaining the ecological balance in the planet. Now, if we are going to compare how bioenergy helps in substituting or helps in achieving the sustainable development goals, the table shows us that each of the bioenergy application helps us to reach a certain SDG or sustainability development goal. For example, the bioenergy offers small farmers to expand and diversify their crop production as well as to boost their income. When this happens, it helps to address the SDG 1, which is no poverty. Now, when we come to small farming communities and they can get food and a better diet, improved health conditions through bioenergy projects and revenues, it leads to higher standards of living. In such an instance, we are able to achieve Sustainability Development Goal 1, which is no poverty, then number 2, zero hunger, and number 3, good health and well-being. Similarly, if we are going to use biofuels such as bioethanol and we are able to decrease the indoor air pollution, use that for our domestic cooking, then we are addressing Sustainability Development Goal 3, that is providing good health and well-being. In places with greater bioenergy potential such as rural areas, vocational training and education on how to use these bioenergy resources is given, then the degree of knowledge and understanding to use these technologies increases, and this opens avenues for new job opportunities as well as entrepreneurship activities. In such an instance, we are able to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 4, which is quality education, and Goal 8, which is increase in economic growth. Next, coming to when we are able to provide bioenergy projects, then there is gender equality available in the rural area, and women come forward to get part in these projects, and hence their status and their income increases, in which case we are providing or we are trying to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 5, which is gender equality. Similarly, when we go in for bioenergy methods such as creation of biogas, focusing on water treatment and lowering the water pollution level, groundwater pollution, we are able to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 6, which is clean water and sanitation. Similarly, we can take up several projects in bioenergy as shown in the table, and achieving each of these projects will help us to achieve many of the Sustainable Development Goals which has been proposed by the UN. So the table also indicates we will be able to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 13 because bioenergy is a renewable form of energy. Similarly, we can achieve aquatic sustainability because of preservation of aquatic life, and hence it is Sustainable Development Goal 14. Similarly, by using bioenergy, we are able to address a majority of the SDG goals, and bioenergy is also a renewable form of energy and also a sustainable form of energy. Now let us see a case study wherein the olive oil sector can be used as a bioenergy supplier in Albania. The goal of Albania's National Renewable Energy Action Plan 2015 to 20 was to increase the final energy consumption by 38% from renewable energy sources. So what happened was, in Albania, biomass was found to be widely available and it was predominantly used as a firewood. In the past few years, production and use of processed wood fuels like pellets and briquettes expanded tremendously. And since Albania is a Mediterranean nation, in that region, production of olive oil was also tremendous. So, considering the need for wood, people felt that they can look out for an alternate source such as olive oil residues. Based on the national goal to increase the energy from biomass, the United Nations Industrial Development Corporation, that is the UNIDO, in cooperation with Albania government, developed a project to promote the use of agro-industrial residues coming out of the oil mills. One of the principal byproduct of the olive oil business is pomace. This can be used in stoves and boilers, and it can be used to generate heat and for cooking purposes. So they converted this pomace into pellets and briquettes so that it can be used in boilers also. So this energy can be used to heat the water in both domestic purposes as well as for industrial purposes, and they found that whatever energy that was required for the olive mill was obtained from this pomace, which was a residue or a waste product in that mill. Further, they also found that the pomace after their use was also available for selling it to neighboring industries. But the challenge they faced was the amount of rural infrastructure and the access to appropriate technologies to use the enormous amount of pomace that was available in Albania. So the action that needs to be taken was Albanian agro industries can create a lot of business using the waste, and they can use the pomace which is available in plenty in Albania in their oil processing industries as well as other industries that require electricity. So the pomace which was available in plenty in Albania can be profitably used by other industries as a fuel source. What is sustainable livelihoods? The second topic. Livelihood is the skill, resources and pursuits necessary for a livelihood to live comfortably. It is said to be sustainable when it can withstand the stress and shock, recover from such stress and shock, and retain an improved level in terms of capacities, assets, and activities without compromising the resource, the natural resource base. So, an approach to considering the goals, scope, and priorities for development effort is sustainable livelihood approach. It is founded on the newer ideas on how the poor and the vulnerable can live their lives in a sustainable manner. The Brundtland Commission revised the term sustainable livelihood after it was first proposed, considering the rural context. The authors Gibson and Graham, Cameron and Healy emphasized the concept of well-being and how a person's well-being affects their capacity for a successful living. So the definition for sustainable rural living was put forth by Robert Chambers and Gordon Conway in 1992, and it is most frequently referred to in the later reports. So according to them, a livelihood comprises the capabilities, assets, stores, resources, claims, etc. required for a means of living. A livelihood is sustainable when it can cope with and recover from stress and shocks, maintain and enhance their capabilities and assets, and provide a sustainable livelihood opportunities for the next generation. It contributes to the next benefits of the other livelihoods at the local, global, in the short term as well as in the long term. Now, how do we achieve a sustainable livelihood? There are several approaches to it. The sustainable livelihood approach makes it easier to identify realistic objectives for activities that are based on the opinions and interests of everyone involved. It does not take part of other tools like sector-wise approaches, integrated rural development or participatory development. However, it establishes a link between individuals and the general supportive environment that affects how livelihood strategies run out. It draws emphasis to the intrinsic potential of the individuals in terms of their knowledge, their social connections, their network, the availability of raw materials, the financial resources, and further the capacity to shape the financial institutions. This approach is people-centered, very responsive, participatory. Further, it is multi-level, starting from the rural, the community level, the city, the global, international level. And it needs partnership of both the public and private sectors. It needs to be sustainable, it needs to be dynamic. There are several models for sustainable livelihood approach. Several organizations include sustainable livelihood into their continuous effort to reduce poverty. The models through which they adopt the sustainable livelihood approach is presented. The first one is given by the United Nations Development Program, and this assesses several forms of capital as part of sustainable living. So, according to the UNDP, they have five main categories of capital. They are the financial capital, social capital, natural capital, the physical capital, and human capital. And according to UNDP, it is for sustainable living. They have stated that all these five capital has to be sustainable. So now let us look what each of these capital addresses. So as shown in the framework, the human capital talks about the capital assets. The natural capital ensures the policies, the frameworks, the structures that comes from the government, and the livelihood outcomes include the sustainable use of natural resources, the income, the well-being, vulnerability, food security. All that comes from the livelihood outcome. And based on the strategies, there is a vulnerability concept which is also present in the framework in the scope of the five capital, and they are the shocks and seasonalities, maybe the natural calamities that come in. All these are vulnerability concepts. So considering all this in the framework, the five capital has to exist, has to work in tandem, and also has to have a sustainable framework. First, look at the five capital. To ensure human capital is present, we need to ensure there is health, nutrition, education, knowledge, skill, capacity of working, the capacity to adapt. So if all these are present, then we say human capital is existing for sustainable living. The second is social capital. Social capital refers to the network, the type of connections people have, and the type of patronage, the neighborhood they exist, the kinship, that is the relationship they have across, be it formal groups or informal groups, or with the organizations which is sponsoring, or with the rules, the government, the regulations of the government. So it is a mechanism by which there is participation of everyone involved. There is a network of people, so that the social capital is good in that community. The third type of capital is the natural capital. Natural capital is nothing but the natural resources. So the natural resources present in that area, in the rural area or in the rural community. So it is about the land, what it can produce, the products that it can give from its agricultural area, the content of water it has, maybe the groundwater. So the accessibility to water, the aquatic resources, the trees and forests it has in that rural area, the wildlife food and shelter facilities, the biodiversity. So all that comes under the natural capital. In other words, the natural resources of the rural area. Next, coming to the physical capital. So the physical is nothing but the infrastructure. So the content of infrastructure the community has, the road facility, the transport facility, the vehicle facilities, the type of shelters it can provide, building facilities, what is the water management system, the sewage management system, the type of fertilizers that it can provide, maybe the organic or chemical fertilizers. So all that comes into the physical infrastructure. And what is the capital? What is the physical capital of that community or the rural area? All that gets into the physical capital. So the last is only the financial capital, invariably in terms of money. So always we used to think capital means money. But in today's context, for sustainable living, it is not just money. So as we have seen, it is all this five capital that has to be present if we require sustainable living. So in financial capital, we talk about savings, the credit, the amount of pensions, the wages, everything related to money comes under financial capital. So all these five capital has to be present in the community in the rural development if we say capital is good. So, the framework for sustainable livelihood ensures that all the five capitals are present. It provides opportunities for developing in all these five capitals. Only then there is a healthy livelihood present in the community. So, a sustainable livelihood approach seeks to broaden the fundamental idea that various households have varying access of resources. However, all of them come together so that there is synergy and there is sustainable livelihood happening in the area. In addition, we have two contexts, the vulnerability context. So, the vulnerability context talks about the shocks such as the conflict or illness. So, presently we had the corona wave. So, that's again a shock which comes to the community. So, in addition, the flood, the storms, the droughts present, sudden diseases that is emerging. So, all these are shocks that is given, and the community is vulnerable to these shocks. In addition to these shocks, we have the seasonality. So, we have the summer, winter, autumn, spring. So, seasonality also brings the natural calamities. So, that is again a vulnerability that the community face in terms of seasonality. Further, we have the economic shocks or the economic upheavals or the economic trends, governance and technology attacks or technology trends. So, all these make the people vulnerable to the uncertain future. So, that also has to be considered when we are talking about a sustainable livelihood. Further, we have from the other side policies and institutions. So, policies and institutions are, it could be the government coming out with various policies or organizations coming out with various policies and framework which has a say on the community. So, the livelihood strategies and outcomes are influenced by the structures present around, the structures of organization, the structure of industry, structure of NGOs, the structure of government. So, all that also has a say on the five capitals. The rules, the policies, the operational plans, the agreement, societal laws, norms, practices determine how the environmental structure performs. So, however, without proper institutions and procedures, putting down policies and framing policies, making these policies into actions is again very difficult. So, structures have to be present, but these structures, presence of this structure creates vulnerability to the community. The next is livelihood strategies and outcomes. So, strategies for achieving a livelihood is creating a livelihood is livelihood strategies. The choice of a livelihood strategies may take into account short-term versus long-term outcomes as well as intensification versus diversification. So, that's a strategy you can adopt, diversifying, or whatever the community is doing, you can intensify. For example, the person may be good in wood carving, maybe the community is good in jewelry. So, whether you're going to intensify that strength or whether we are going to diversify the strength so that there is a livelihood strategy that the community takes. So, such things also come into the community to increase the capital of the community. Non-natural resource based or is it off-farm activities, whether you're going to go for migration. So, all these are part of the livelihood strategies that the community takes it up so that there is a sustainable living in that area. More income and enhanced well-being, decreased vulnerability, better food security, sustainable use of natural resources, and most important, restored human dignity are the possible livelihood outcome which comes out of sustainable livelihood. The implications of this is sustainable livelihood approaches or promotes unconventional thinking. It liberates development practitioners from conventional methods and it tries to identify new avenues, new areas of creating capital for the community. In order to make development activities more process oriented, it tries to invite new contexts, new relationship and new network mechanisms. Now, in addition to the UNDP approach for sustainable living, There are other approaches given by other organizations. The second approach is the emergency relief management and long-term development projects, which are the main aims of concentration for the CARE. So CARE stands for Cooperative for Assistance and Relief Everywhere. So it is more of a approach which is required for sustainable living in emergency situation. To better oversee, assess and track the work they do, CARE has created a framework for household livelihood security during 1994. So instead of taking a sectoral strategy, CARE has adopted a sustainable livelihood paradigm, and it emphasizes on holistic development considering all parameters. The third approach is the development for international development, which is called as DFID, and it is given by the British Department, and it manages and oversees any aid that is given to alleviate poverty. So DFID uses a sustainable livelihood framework to concentrate comprehensively on certain initiatives that comes under their purview to enhance a person or a community standard of living. So the DFID's metrics include activities that are dynamic, multi-level, human-centered and is sustainable. Now coming to the third topic, which is sustainable rural development, or in other words, ensuring that the poor in the community have a sustainable livelihood by developing the projects or programs that is available in the community. So in the context of climate change, land degradation, deforestation, biodiversity loss, habitat fragmentation, poverty, isolation, rural people face several difficulties. In the rural areas around the world, a traditional economy centered on subsistence agriculture is still very common. Famine, extreme poverty, land abandoning, large-scale migration from the rural to the urban areas, all this results in economy vulnerability, and it is not good for the holistic living in the world. Further, there could be extreme weather conditions, flash floods, landslides, which causes people to migrate, to move to other areas, looking out for livelihood, and over a period of time, the area gets deserted, the community is lost, and there is low agricultural production. So the challenges we face is social, demographic, economic, governance and environmental issues in the rural areas, and this needs to be overcome. Agricultural land abandonment, which is very difficult, which is linked to traditional farming, low productivity, inadequate infrastructure and an aging population, because what happens is as the older people do the farming and they realize that their livelihood is very low, they ensure that the younger generation move to more greener pastures. They send them to urban areas to earn their income. So the land is abandoned and there is widespread migration, and all this leads to instability or a dishevel in the holistic living of the people, causes dysfunctioning of the community. So further, when the farmers use seeds, today we know there are different techniques, different methodologies to find whether the seed is effective seed which leads to fruition, or it is a seed which is not good, which is not healthy. There are many technologies available. However, low usage of better seed, incorrect fertilizer, insufficient irrigation, lack of incentives for farmers, all this causes people to migrate. Further, it also causes poor agricultural production. India being basically an agricultural country, when the rural people move away from their rural activity, basically farming, then it is a loss to the environment, it is lost to the economy, it is lost to the government, and finally it is lost to the people. In addition to the limited access to essential facilities, extreme poverty, hunger, undernourishment are major challenges which is being faced in the rural community. So rural areas in emerging nations are further threatened by climate change, fragmentation of the land, resource depletion, And in addition, there are also instances of corruption, political unrest in certain communities, in certain rural areas. So now how do we overcome all these challenges which is being faced by in the rural area, predominantly by the farmers, by the agriculturalists? So sustainable rural development is a dynamic field to uplift the economic, social and environmental aspects. It is essential for removing poverty, to bring in farmers, to bring in dignity among the farmers. So there are 3 hours, 6 hours and 9 hours available to tackle this issue. So what are these? So rural resilience and circular economy are essential, and they are the strategic initiatives that we need to take so that we advance the rural economies, we lessen the socio-economic unfairness, and we ensure justice to the environment, and we also provide quality education to the rural people. So it is essential, otherwise it is going to be detrimental to our ecology, and in the long term it is not just the rural community will be facing this problem, it will slowly spread to the urban areas, because once the agriculture production is lost, then we need to depend on foreign imports for our need of agricultural products. So we need to ensure that the rural community is taken care of. They need to switch over from a linear economy to a circular economy if it has to be sustainable. Linear economy meaning that they take, they make and they dispose. Instead, when they move to circular economy, it is they take, they use and they recycle so that it is used again. So there are other activities that needs to be integrated into the 6R policies, such as revaluation of the resources, redistribution of the income and to improve relations. So in addition to the 3 R's that we have already studied, we now add on revaluation, redistribution and relationship as far as rural sustainable development is concerned. The 9 R's are policy with other 3 R's, which is resilience, that is adaptability, and the European Union is aware of the importance of changing the economic models from a linear to a circular economy framework. The bottom-up approach, effective participation of the rural residents is essential if the community has to be uplifted. So every member of the community has to understand the importance, has to invest for a circular economy and for a bottom-up approach, so that the rural livelihood can improve and can be made sustainable. The success of sustainable rural development thus depends on several factors. One, we need to promote pro-planning and budgeting. That is, we need to make planning very proactive in the rural areas. We need to offer social protection. We need to create and develop educational initiatives so that there is education given for everyone. The moment we are able to remove the illiteracy, automatically people become aware of the problems and they know how to ensure that there is job opportunities for everyone, there is employment, entrepreneurship activities present. Further, we need to improve the access to affordable and effective healthcare facilities. We need to encourage the participation in the decision making process at the community level so that everyone takes part in the decision process. We need to create awareness on the gender equity, create awareness on the women right, as well as we need to empower the rural women so that they also take part in the community activities. We need to encourage the use of ecologically friendly techniques, renewable energy sources. Use of renewable energy sources need to be encouraged, and they need to encourage the sustainable use of land resources so that they prevent land degradation. All of the above will help us to have a sustainable rural development. Now let us see few questions and answers. What are bioenergy technologies? Bioenergy technologies can be classified into 3 types: thermochemical processes, which will involve pyrolysis and gasification; biochemical processes, which will involve aerobic digestion and fermentation, and the other processes which is trans-esterification. So modern bioenergy technologies include liquid biofuels, which is produced from bagasse and other plants, biorefineries, biogas produced through anaerobic digestion of residues, where we get biogas or gobar gas, which can be used for heating and cooking purposes, wood pellet heating systems, and other technologies. Question 2. What are the advantages and disadvantages of biomass energy? Of course, we have been talking about bioenergy and we have been telling that it is sustainable, it is renewable. So it has got its own advantages. The advantages are it is renewable, there is carbon neutrality, there is less dependency on fossil fuels, it is very versatile, it is readily available, and the cost is very low. And further, the amount of waste is very less because we are going to recycle the waste, reuse the waste, and it can be produced at the domestic level. However, it has its own disadvantages. It is not completely clean because waste indirectly means it is waste, and there is a high cost involved in comparison to other alternates because there is a huge quantity of waste available all over the place. So gathering the waste, segregating the waste involves costs. There is possible deforestation, and there is lots amount of space required wherever wastes are collected, dumped, segregated. It requires water, it has its own inefficiencies, and further, newer technologies, efficient technologies are under development. Now, third question, what do we mean by sustainable rural development? So, sustainable rural development involves a holistic approach where the daily basic needs of the rural population must be converted into a reliable public utilities combined with technical, socio-economic and environmental conditions to support the rural regional economies as well as support the urban-rural linkages. Now, as the picture indicates, for sustainable rural development, there are several challenges, and we need to ensure that we address all the challenges as presented in the picture, and all this will help us reach the sustainable development goals and achieve the agenda of 2030. These challenges is from a development perspective could include improvement of quality of life at the rural area, sustainable agriculture, rural resilience, circular economy, and reducing inequalities. So to summarize, in this module, we have understood how bioenergy is a sustainable form of renewable energy. We have learned the need for sustainable livelihoods, and we have discerned the importance of sustainable rural development. Thank you. Thank you.